All right, welcome back to the No Mulligans podcast here in the studio at Franklin Bridge. And if you guys are watching on YouTube, which you should be, you got to Google the No Mulligans podcast and you'll be able to see us. Or if you type that in the search bar, you'll be able to see us. And the reason is because we have our first guest of 2024, right. A really awesome one where you're going to literally get to see inside the ropes. I'm alluding to this. You're going to get to see inside the ropes of the day-to-day on one of the golf tours here, or multiple golf tours. We'll be talking about it. But before I hand the mic to Scott so he can introduce our guest, just a reminder, if you guys are listening on Apple Music or if you're listening on Spotify, make sure you give us a follow or a thumbs up, 5-star rating, and if you could write a review, that'd be great. If you've gained some knowledge from this podcast, it really helps us when other people are searching for golf podcasts in the search bar. So without further ado, I'm not going to waste any more time. Scott, do you want to introduce who we have here today?
Yeah. So, the golf world is a very connected world. What is that? What do they call that? 3 degrees of separation. Yeah. And, had a student this winter, Ken. He's been a recent listener of the podcast, and he's like, hey, I got a cousin who's a caddy out on the LPGA tour, and you were out on the PGA tour for a while as well. It's his name's Paul Fusco. I got it right. And he's currently a caddy for Se-Young Kim. Did I pronounce that right? Se-Young Kim. And then previously, you've caddied for a number of other players, but your other most notable one, I think, is Vijay Singh. Is that correct?
Correct, yeah.
So we're excited to kind of have him on and share some of his experiences. And as always, we love to leave you all with something you can take away. So I know Pro-Ams are always entertaining, but Paul, if you'll kind of give us a brief rundown, how does somebody become a caddy in the first place? We've had people ask us that before, and how do you become a caddy? How'd you get in? And then I guess that kind of take us the brief overview from how you got to where you are now.
Right. So it's funny. That's a great question because every caddy has a totally unique story how they got there. It's not like a normal job. There's a great story with every caddy. But for me, I got it as a job as a summer kid when I was 12, 13. And I fell in love with it immediately. And I was just like, this is what I want to do. I just knew it. It was in my heart. And I went to college, graduated, and a week later I'm driving out to California trying to chase my dream. And I club caddy for 3 years, then I got a break. I went over to Europe, and it started. I just kept chasing it.
I guess they say the rest is history, right?
Right.
Yeah. Well, Paul, I've got a question for you. Just because I fell in love with playing the game, and it sounds like you fell in love with almost seeing the game from a different lens. Tell us about what is so interesting for you seeing the game through the lens of a caddy instead of as the player playing the game.
Right. For some reason, it was cool to me if I was in some way able to help somebody or make a difference, or and when you do it, and when you see it happen, and however it happens, there's a million ways it actually just happens. But when it does, it's the coolest thing ever. It's like, yeah, I made a difference. It was cool.
Yeah, it kind of, this could be a little bit of a crude analogy, but it kind of reminds me of when I'd play the old school Madden video games back in the day, and you could almost do you could coach the franchise from the GM's point of view, and it was always really cool to be able to play through a different point of view. So I can certainly see how, coaching the game or advising the game, if you will, from your point of view, especially with some of the best players in the world, must have been an experience that very few of us get to experience.
Oh, for sure. The players I've been around, it's been a treat.
Yeah, the way you describe that reminds me of the teaching side for me. Teaching's kind of been a part of me as far back as I can go. Even back to middle school, I'm trying to help certain kids in class and that sort of thing. And I was doing it in middle school and high school with the kids that were coming up underneath me playing golf. And there's something about, and obviously the player, it's kind of fun to play with a golf game that's better than yours. So I get to teach golf games that are better than mine. And it's kind of neat to see what they can do, and it's definitely a team-oriented thing. I think golf's finally getting that look of like it's not just the player. There's some players I'm guessing that wouldn't be out there without a caddy, and they use them in different ways, if I'm not mistaken.
Right. 100%. And the biggest thing really is the chemistry. If you guys get along, does the player want you there? Do you want to be there? If all those things are there, it's going to work out, and if it's not, it's definitely not.
And Paul, question for you here, as far as you've gotten to play with a bunch of different players and see a bunch of different golf games. I think one thing that we don't see on TV or from an outsider's perspective is how that relationship gets built in the first part of y'all's time together. Talk to us a little bit about how you get maybe matched up with a professional, how you start learning their game, how you start building that chemistry before you ever hit the first tee in the first tournament.
Right. Well, I mean, for example, with Seong, it was nice for a change. She sought me out instead of me asking her for the job, which was nice. So going into it, you kind of knew that, well, they're interested, and sometimes you don't know that. But that makes it easier to get the ball rolling. So, you both want to be there. And then you just learn each other, just like any relationship. You learn each other's habits, what their tendencies are, their strengths, weaknesses. And then you just try to fill in the blanks when you need to.
Is there a certain thing specifically right now that you see in Seong's game that you enjoy or you like taking advantage of on the course, saying, man, like she's really good at hitting this shot, man, we can play into this a lot throughout the round? And of course, any trade secrets, keep them to yourself, but is there anything that you enjoy extracting out of a player if it is in their wheelhouse?
Oh, well, with her specifically, she's just so good. I mean, we've been kind of struggling the last couple of years. We haven't won, but it's still in there. It's just golf. Everybody goes through it. But the cool thing is, I've seen it, and I know it's in there, and I can't wait to see it again. Because when she's on, it's something special. I mean, it's like everybody's playing for second. I mean, they're just on. It's it when you see it. And she hits incredible.
Yeah, and so. It's funny you start to talk about like how well they hit it, and getting to see the recent tournament where the men and women were paired together, the PGA LPGA Tour. Exciting to see that. You've caddied for both, like you can't like pick sides like this one's better, that one's better. But it's interesting to hear the PGA Tour players talk about like how well those girls can really play. And I guess my question I'm trying to ask is like, what are similarities, what are differences that you see between having caddied on both sides of that, maybe one of them.
The biggest one is like club head speed, right? And separated, right? I mean, because it was funny, I was never going to work the ladies tour. I was just out of ignorance. I was like, I don't want to go. It's not the same game, blah, blah, blah. I was wrong. But that club head speed makes a total difference. I mean, they can't hit some of the shots the men hit purely because of that, right? And getting out of rough, in thick rough, they got no chance compared to a man. But that really makes a difference as far as shot making. But it also, to their advantage, they keep it on the planet too when they miss, right? Mm-hmm. And they got good short games too, so they're probably more accurate to a degree.
Yeah, Paul, I was about to ask a question related to that. It seems like the men's game right now, especially with the ball rollback coming into play, it seems like it's been very much a driver wedge type of game over the last couple of years. Do you see any strengths that the women might have that the guys just simply don't focus on because of the style of game that gets played? Simply maybe in the longer irons, kind of those 150 to maybe 210 shots?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if this answers it specifically, but like a lot of girls, their irons stop at a 6, sometimes 7, and they got a bouquet of hybrids in there, which, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
so it's that kind of to it where, a man still wants to have at least a 3-iron, I would think, because for some par 4s and tee shots and just low shots.
It's funny that you say that. It makes me think of a number of our adult men, particularly over like 50, that really without like a heavy workout program, somebody on them all the time to improve mobility, stability, flexibility, strength, and coordination, all those components, like they're kind of around those same clubhead speed numbers. You know, the high 90s, low hundreds. Like they enjoy watching the women's game because in a lot of ways they need to be trying to play a similar type of game rather than the men, simply from a pure clubhead speed standpoint.
Right. I've always said that. I mean, since I've been out there now, I wouldn't have said it before, but now that I've been out there, I'm surprised more people don't tune in to ladies because you can play what they're doing. You can't hit like the men. I mean, most people.
Right. Well, you know, that's one of the things that is a challenge for us and a fight for us is you talk to the really good trainers who train some of the best players in the world. They're like, the vast majority of people can't train and swing like the PGA Tour players because they don't have the bodies to do it. But they can learn how to play learn how to hit straight for most of them. They're like, oh, I hit it farther when I hit it straighter. I had a guy say the other day, he's like, that really went that far? Maybe I should just work on my swing instead of trying to hit it farther. Like, yeah, it went farther when you did it right and you hit it straighter at the same time. And so I think that's like, it's easy to get lost in the sales, hit it far, which if you're talking top tier college, both on the guys and the girls side, like hitting it farther is a massive advantage. But for club pro that's a 15 handicap, could learn how to short game it a little better and hit it in play.
Exactly. But the other side of that, too, if you're going to hit it that far, you better have a good short game to match it.
Right. Talk to Golf.
Paul, I got a question for you here. For just simply put, what was your welcome to the tour moment? Like your moment where you realized, oh, this is different than just a Sunday round of golf. What's your welcome to the tour moment, if you have one? Well,
it's when my first job I had was VJ in '93 over in Europe.
Sucks.
So that moment, I mean, not necessarily what you were asking, but that moment was like, oh my God, here it is. When he offered me the job, and I go up on the range, and remember the old red and white Wilson leather bags?
Yes, yes.
That's his bag, and there it is. And it was like I'm walking up, and everything disappeared, and there it is. You know, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is happening. You know, there it is, the Wilson bag. You know, and then. You know, and then he made it real easy. We just started talking, and it was comfortable, and, you know, got right into it and took off.
That's wild. Yeah. Like, it is funny. Like, I'm glad you asked that question because, like, if you asked me that question about teaching, like, when was my moment when I'm up here on my own, starting on my own for the first time after being somewhere for 10 years, it's like, when was your, like, wow, you're on your own? I think it wasn't until, like, I had an intern for the first summer as one of my college girls, and it was COVID, right? So, like, it didn't feel like a real job until, like, the next spring, summer. And I was like, oh, I got no one to rely. Like, I'm the top dog now. Like, okay, it's my turn to make the mistakes, I guess. And so it definitely, like, I don't know. There's a nostalgia about that I haven't thought about.
Yeah, it's funny, too. Like, looking back real quick, I'm looking back, you know, after 32 or 31, whatever years, and I've grown kids now, and I look back, I was just young and dumb and chasing a dream, and I see all the things I did that I didn't really see I was doing at the time, and I'm like, holy cow, I can't believe I did. You know what I mean? I really chased it, like, with no limits. And I tell your kids to do the same thing, but you look back and you're like, holy cow, that was really risky, you know.
It's awesome. I mean, looking back on it, I mean, it's a whole career. You know, it's incredible. Paul, what is some things that separates let's just say a rookie caddy to a seasoned vet like yourself with over 30 years in playing golf? Like, what is something that separates those two caliber of caddies, and what is it that the elite tour players want to see in a caddy?
That's a great question. It's funny because when you're a rookie, you're thinking, oh, what can I do? What do I have to do? All these things. And what you really need to be realizing, which only comes with time and experience, is it's not about me. It's about the player. What does he need or she need? You know what I mean? It's like you're there to help them, not tell them how you think they should play. You know what I mean? There's a time to talk about that, but when you're working in a tournament, you're catering to their needs. You know what I mean? It's all about them, nothing about you. You know, that's a big lesson to learn quick.
Yeah, and that's getting to even think about. Hank used to always tell me, he used to say, Scott, you got to be careful how much credit you take for a player's development, even as a teacher and coach. Like, yes, you have a role, you're a part of their process, and you help improve mechanics, and you deal with emotions and dealing with life situations and helping them manage who they are. But at the end of the day, the player has to swing the club. They have to decide to commit to the shot. And a lot of times they kind of have, like, especially once they're developed kind of where they're at, where you're at, they kind of have the answer. Sometimes they just need some reassurance, and you need to be there to be a support for them to have the answers that they need to have.
And like make them think it's their idea in the first place, which is like that's the whole art of caddying. You know, instead of, I mean, some players, you know, they want you to just spit it out and tell them, you know, but some, if you do that, it's the other reaction. It's not a good reaction. You know, you need to tell them the right way. You know.
Yeah, Hank used to call it guided.
I used to get frustrated early on. Sorry, I used to get frustrated early on. It's like, I know it's a 7-iron, 100%. Just hit it, you know. But you can't do that up. You know what I mean? And
no.
A couple of seasoned caddies, I remember early on, they're like, you can't do it that way. You got to, and I'm like, but it's right, you know. And then you're frustrated, and then also finally I get frustrated not doing it, and I tried it, and I go, oh, you know, the light goes on. You're like, here you go. You got to do it the right way.
Well, it's that's one of the things I'm learning the longer I teach, especially being here on my own. And like I look back in certain moments, and like there are certain things that I've said to a student at a certain time, and you look back and go like, that was the exact wrong thing to say, and I can see how that went in this direction, whether it's technique related or just like emotional related, whatever it is. You're like, oh, that wasn't right, or I should have been more direct with that person. I should have been more. Like, it's knowing what to say in the right moments, and that's hard. Like, you know, I've caddied for a number of my players, and I find that the swing coach caddying for the players not usually a good situation because they're still trying to, like, they're just by nature of it still trying to think about their golf swing. It's like, I just try and get you to play, and I'm enjoying getting to be there and watch you play, and I'm getting to learn. But it's it's different. Like, it's just a different experience, and giving them what they need is a challenge in and of itself.
Oh, yeah.
Well, we also, on the show, Paul, we talk about how there is just such a disconnect between how you can have a perfect swing, but if you don't go out and play all the time, you might not score even as well as somebody who has a worse swing than you, right? So it almost seems like you being the coach, if you will, of the playing side would actually cater better than to say if Scott were to go and do it for one of his students. It seems like you might even know how to extract some things more in a more delicate manner than Scott might if he was teaching you or more direct in your teaching. So I guess the question follows, Paul, is there a moment in time where you can think of a specific shot where you gently or delicately talked a player into hitting a shot that they were uncomfortable with and it paid off?
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's a lot of them actually, but I'm just trying to nothing.
That's good. That means you're caddying for good players, right?
But no, I mean, like, I'll do that. That's funny you say that. Like, this won't sound like a big deal, but it is. Like, Stan will have a shot, and she'll be like, "This is 7-iron, right?" And I'll be like, "I know it's not enough, but it's good. I mean, it's going to get there, but it's short side, right? It's going to be a little short, but it's the right club. I mean, there's no other club. That's it." And just saying something like that, like, "Hey, I love the club, but it's definitely on the short side." Just for her, I know she's going to react. She's going to give it that little extra that I want her to, right? Ooh. If I didn't say that, she did it normal, and then it'd be like, well, she'd think it was the wrong club because it came up, 6 yards short instead of 2 or whatever.
Yeah, that's so
little things like.
That's so interesting because I'm thinking about it like in business terms with me, and a lot of the times when I'm talking to a client, we've got a tendency as humans to say like yes but, and instead to say yes and. And sometimes, and Scott and I will talk about this as if we're caddying out on the PGA Tour, but to use that positive language and that, hey, you're on the right track, but you need to go here, instead of completely shutting them down and trying to build it up yourself. Would you say that's a fair analogy?
Very, yes.
Awesome.
Yeah, language. So, like, I used to hate English and now I've written 2 books and I've got a podcast, and I love to read now. Like I used to hate reading, but the words like create thought pictures and they create emotion, and so like I don't even like using the word consistent with a lot of students because they all show up and want to be more consistent. I was like, I want you to have more control. Like you can go for increasing levels of control. That way you're not using blame language. I want you ownership language. Like I try to catch as you gain the relationship with the student, it's like I'm going to pick at some of those little language pieces because they're keeping you from getting to where you need to get to. And you don't even realize it, but he's dead on. Like if I'm kind of between clubs on like a wedge shot, I've learned through my coach in college, like how do I make sure like this shot, I know I need a little more, but like I don't really want to take it more. He's like, why don't you just say give it a little giddy up? Like there's hey, it's 76 with some giddy up. Like it's still 76, but like just be a little more assertive with it. And so like that helped me with some tournaments under stress towards the end when you're by yourself and you don't have a caddy there with you, you don't have coach standing next to you. And I even think go ahead.
No, you just said something about owning it, and that's big. And you always say the player has to own it. The caddy does too, but more so the player. When they own it, man, you make big strides because you own it. You right away, all right, yeah, I didn't do this or I needed to do that, as opposed to throwing the club back, oh, it's the wrong, club again, or, whatever, not, defaulting. But it's big owning it.
Yeah, Paul, what are some things that you that were some kind of like rules of thumb for either Sejong or VJ where you knew that there was a certain tonality that you needed to talk to them in? Like, is there any specificities from player to player, if you will?
Oh, for sure, yeah. Like I said, I mean, some players, they want you to be direct and more assertive, whereas others, some just want the number, get out of the way, But they're all different that way, yeah.
Yeah. I remember a moment when you said something earlier. I remember a moment watching the British Open. Jordan Spieth hits a nice tee shot in the final round. It's the one where he was like over by the Titleist, like, yeah. But the first hole, the ball trickles down into the rough as it can out there over in Europe, but like that ball just kind of trickled into the rough, and Spieth's like, geez, like golly, like look at that, like I hit it great, and it just like rolled over here, and Greller I'll never forget this moment. I don't remember what the number was, but it was like 166. Get over it. Like we're on the whatever it is, the 55th hole off the tee shot. We cannot start the final round with this. Like, and that's the moment where, but it's knowing. Yeah. Like, if he doesn't start that round that way, it probably doesn't end well for Jordan. It probably continues to fall apart, and those moments matter, but you only get those by having the tight relationship with the player. You can't just be a caddy or just be a player, and I think there's an art to learning that caddy-player experience.
Yeah, and to add on to that, Paul, too, do you ever think about momentum during a round? I know that the player is definitely thinking about focusing on executing the shot. Do you kind of have a larger sense of the momentum that's happening during the round?
Yeah, if you're not aware of momentum, it'll show itself, and it'll be a rude awakening. No, momentum's gigantic. I mean, you keeping it going. I mean, because you can look back on every round where you didn't get the most out of it, and you're like, right there, that shot just killed the momentum. We had to start over, for sure. Is that a moment, too, where if you feel momentum swaying in your favor, you might start advising more and more aggressive shots as well? Not necessarily. I mean, yeah, it can be, but it's more just maintained. When the momentum's going, don't too high, too low. Don't throw a wrench in the system. Just keep doing what you're doing, and let the result come. Don't you just want to play. That's the whole thing. Play golf. Don't think golf. Or the range is for practicing, but golf course is for playing.
I'm reminded of a quote that Cameron McCormick said at the Teaching and Coaching Summit one year. He said, "Your confidence has to be higher than their doubt." And I'm assuming that goes for a caddy too. Like when they're feeling all that pressure and their heart rate's at 160 beats per minute coming down the last 3 holes and they're tied for the lead, and the caddy's job in that in that setting to me is really challenging because you can't match their nervous energy. You have to like oppose it, and both and verbally and physically and.
You got to talk. Make sure you talk soft, or you know what I mean. Don't raise your voice. Don't elevate anything. Just keep everything calm and as best you can. Like you've been all day.
Yeah, for sure. And amateurs. What you?
Yeah. So I remember Suai sharing a story of some pro-ams because I'm sure you've been in a number of those.
Oh yeah.
But and this is kind of like the last couple minutes trying to bring it home for our listener. But it's like there was a moment where they were playing basically from the same distance on one of the shots, and he turned to Suai and said, "Don't listen to anything I'm about to say. It's 155," and he looks at Suai. It's like it's 140. Like it's not actually 155. Yeah. That guy doesn't have a clue how far he hits his clubs. So we're gonna say it's one. But just like I guess the question that makes me think of is, what are the things you've seen in amateurs in those pro-ams that can be beneficial to them in terms of playing? Like obviously you got the teacher's perspective, right? But the caddy's perspective, when we're not there, they're probably nervous. It's like, by the way, that tour player doesn't really care how you play today. What do you say? What do you see?
Well, I mean, that's just it. I mean, it's a pro-am. It's supposed to be a fun day. They're supposed to enjoy it, right? Of course, naturally, they're going to be nervous, but like Seung, and I always try to too, it does a real good job of trying to make them relax immediately. Just, take it down. Of course you're nervous, first tee shot, all that stuff. But just make it a fun day and help, watch them hit a couple shots. Give them a little pointer, nothing gigantic, but just, a little thing here or there. And just talk about other things besides golf sometimes too, just make it a fun, relaxed day, right?
Yeah. Love that. As somebody who's seen a bunch of holes, Paul, what are 2 or 3 things that you could tell an amateur that aren't related to a swing per se that would have them shoot a better score in a round if they had you next to them?
Well, I mean, this is probably related to a swing, but like the biggest thing I've seen over the years for me, it's like if you just complete your backswing, I don't care what your swing looks like, just complete your backswing. It solves a ton of problems, and it creates, it's something simple and effective.
Well, I like that too because I do the finish a lot of times as well. It's like just get to a finish. That's one thing I got to watch Scott Wilkerson, who's fit for 20-something years on the PGA Tour and occasionally dabbles over there on the LPGA Tour.
Might have seen him.
Yeah, probably crossed paths. He's a UST rep. But it's like for players that are like nervous, not hitting it well, hitting it bad, and they just get more amped up, he's like, I just give me a finish. I can't fit you. If you like, just get me to a finish. Like I just need a swing that I can work with. And like people get so amped up. Things like finish a backswing is I've heard that old caddy trick. I mean, that's fantastic. Like it slows them down too. Like they generally don't swing as quick. Sorry, I'm on the wrong side of the mic a lot. Jack's cleaning me up, but no, like those types of things, like they matter. I'm a big fan of them watching more LPGA golf, generally speaking, for the general public. 100%. And Elijah and I have been trying to go ahead.
The other thing too, you can go to the other way, like when they're playing bad. This goes for a pro too, but an amateur, it's like they're doing swing mechanics instead of playing golf, right? So I tell them a lot of times, I say, just stand behind the ball, see what kind of shot you want to hit, and picture it in your mind, and then keep that picture in your head over the ball. Don't be thinking any swing thoughts, and it'll happen,
Yeah, a lot of the time it's just like be an athlete, right? Like you did all your preparation beforehand. Now you're here. Just go be an athlete.
Trust it, yeah.
I love it.
Yeah, that one of the things I used to ask people to do was like get that picture and hold that picture. Let me know when you lose it if you lose it. The number of people that lose the picture before they ever, like the club doesn't even go back. I was like, that's a skill you need to learn how to do, and all the best players in the world have learned how to do that. And they go through moments where they lose that. And when you're choking the crap out of it, it's easy to go back to like try to grab swing mechanics, not understanding that your subconscious brain can still make the ball go to set target. Perfect golf swings don't hit it at the target if it's not attached to it. And so that's neat to see.
You just subconscious takes over, and it works every time if you let it.
Trying to think of one more question. This is just kind of a fun general one. What tournaments are you looking forward to caddying at this year? Maybe a favorite golf course you like to caddy at?
Well, British Open this year for the ladies is St. Andrews, so that's always a treat.
Oh, that's going to be fun. That's cool. You have one more?
Yeah, I've got a fun last question for you here. There's been a lot of talk about changing the game in one way or the other, right? Either you do rollback, club technology, all that kind of stuff. Paul, how would you change the game to make golf a better playing experience?
More caddy.
Oh, you can. That's a great question.
Program.
It's a big question.
You got me on the spot.
Don't make him implicate himself.
I know.
Immediately, I think about like the ball change, and it's like I don't know if that's going to be good or bad. It's 2028 when they're talking about doing it. It's like I somehow just max out, like no more increasing distance. You know what I mean? We should be as far as we can get. You would think at this point. So something along those lines.
I love it. Well, Paul, man, we really appreciate you being here and being on the podcast. And it's not every day that we get somebody with as much tenure on the tours as you. So we appreciate you sharing your knowledge today, man.
Well, I think, too, it's going to be kind of neat. People are going to have somebody to go watch now over on the LPGA Tour. I mean, we have about not quite 200 listeners every podcast, so she'll have some more fans that she won't know about, but that's okay. But if we can get more exposure to different parts of the game and different aspects, hoping to bring in Chip Beck later this year. His son is married to my wife's sister, so some connections through there. But
great guy.
Just get people to be exposed to more parts of the game, and appreciate you being on here and getting an active caddy's perspective, and we appreciate it. I'm going to get you, when we get off here, I'm going to get you get your address. I'm going to send you some No Mulligans swag. Cool. Something simple. So we'll have some fun with it.
Appreciate you guys having me on.
Yeah, you bet. Jack.
Yeah, I'll wrap us up here. Guys, thanks so much for listening to this episode of the No Mulligans podcast. Thanks to Paul Fusco for coming on the podcast and sharing his experience on the tours. Paul, is there any place that they can find you or Stay Young? Where you guys going to be on how many events this year?
Somewhere between 25 and 28, typically.
So if you guys watch the LPGA Tour, you'll be able to see Paul over there, and I'm sure she's got an Instagram as well. So go follow Stay Young.
TikTok.
LPGA player, whatever, you can find it on there. I don't do any social media, but that's all right.
Well, if you guys see Paul on the LPGA Tour out there, make sure that you send an Instagram DM over to SHassy Golf, and we'll shout Paul out on the podcast here. So, y'all, thanks so much for listening, and thanks for listening, watching, viewing, subscribing, wherever you guys are doing. We really appreciate you guys, and we'll see you on the next one. Peace.